to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So welcome to our November 29th, 2022 Tiverton School Committee meeting. At this point, I would like to introduce the Tiverton Town Clerk, Joan Chabot, to swear in our newly re-elected members and conduct the election for the school committee chair. Mrs. Chabot.
Good evening. If the Deb would stand, and Elaine, you will stand. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and obey the laws of the United States of America and of the state of Rhode Island. That I will in all respects observe the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the town of Tiverton, and will faithfully discharge the duties as a member of the school committee for the town of Tiverton. So help me God. Congratulations.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn over the chair to Mrs. Chabot.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. For the election of the school committee chair, we will now take nominations from the board, from the committee. Do I have a nomination?
I would like to nominate Jerry Larkin for the chair of the Tiverton School Committee.
I'll second that.
Do I have any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, we will have you vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay. No.
Motion carries. Now I'll turn the meeting over to the chair for application of the nominations of the vice chair.
Thank you, Ms. Chabot.
Thank you, Mrs. Chabot. So now I'd like to open the floor for nominations for the vice chair of the school committee.
I'll nominate Elaine Pavao.
I'll second. So Elaine Pavao has been nominated and seconded. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Pallasch?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavao?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Congratulations, Mrs. Pavao.
Thank you.
So next on our business is the appointment to various boards. There are basically 10 positions, 2 members of the sick bank, 2 members of the policy subcommittee, 1 legislative liaison, 2 finance subcommittee members, 2 health and wellness committee members, and a liaison to the town council. So I'm going to ask just for volunteers, since the pay is commensurate with that.
I'll stay on
Descriptor.
policy if no one wants it.
Okay. I would sort of like to go on policy myself if there's any, or would you rather prefer to keep it, Diane? I'll defer to
Or
you.
Diane, if you want to do
You're on it,
policy
still
with Jerry,
policy,
that's
right?
fine.
I'm open to anything.
You know what? I've been on policy a long time. Why don't you two go ahead?
We can
Okay.
do that.
That good with you? Good with you guys?
Do you want to be on policy?
No.
Who's going to be on policy? Those
So,
the 2 girls?
so.
No,
No.
Jerry.
No, me and,
Jerry,
Oh, Jerry.
me and Diane.
You and Diane. Okay.
Jerry, Diane.
Sick bank right now, just to keep things a little bit in order, is Deb and Elaine. Are you guys okay sticking with that?
I want to stay on sick bank.
Sure.
Okay. Our legislative liaison, I think, is Mike.
Mike, I think.
Sorry if I
It's you,
Yes.
Mike.
misremember that.
Yes.
Do you want to stay on that? Does anyone have a burning desire to be on it?
I have a burning desire.
to be in.
To be on it. Okay, great. And finance, I believe, is Diane and Mike, correct?
I'm open to allowing others to take it.
I don't mind staying on that, if someone would join me.
What are you staying on?
Diane, are you okay staying on it?
Trying to follow that.
We haven't met.
Okay.
I honestly don't even know the purpose of it any longer.
I mean, we created that, so we don't necessarily have to continue it. I think we've kind of, as a board, started taking over finance jointly.
Yeah, certainly in the
So
most
maybe we
immediate
could
past.
skip it.
It
and
had its purpose when it
Yeah.
was initiated, for sure.
Maybe
So,
we could skip it.
Okay, we can
and
let
then if
that
we need it, we
membership
can-
lapse,
yeah.
and if we need it, we'll.
Yeah.
And then next is Health and Wellness Committee,
I'll stay on that.
okay? And Mike, are you the other member on that?
I think so.
I think you are
Yes.
too.
I have a burning desire to stay on that.
Okay, all right. this
What's your
is-
burning desire?
The breakfast in Warwick every year.
What do you mean, happy breakfast?
All right. And next is the liaison to the town council.
That was me.
Diane, wasn't it?
Do you want to keep it, or would you rather not do it?
I
or-
can take it.
Okay,
Yes? She wants to stay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
all right. And then last is the appointment of the clerk.
I will recommend Carolyn. I did speak with her and asked her if she'd be willing to continue, and she graciously said, "Do I have a choice?" I have a burning desire.
Well,
I'll
I'll,
s-
I'll second that burning desire.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? I will ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavao,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mrs. Pallasch?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So congratulations, Carolyn. Is anyone signed up for our open forum? All right. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavao?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pallasch? I vote yes. So next is item 6, policy development, revision and review. I'm open to how we take this. We are deleting policies number 993 and 1263. One is the outlined policy for convening search committees and going through the process of hiring administrators. It's now essentially obsolete. And the second policy, I can't recall off the top of my head what it was.
Student achievement? was
Student
that?
achievement,
Yeah.
yep.
That
Or
is
was it
also
testing?
obsolete.
So both essentially obsolete.
Dr. Larkin, should we take a vote just to go ahead and delete those two?
Yeah, no, I
Because
thi-
the rest are first reads.
I think we need a motion and so I was going to take them both as a single motion and then open discussion if there is any, and then we can take a vote. I do believe we have to take the vote, you're right.
I'd like to make a motion to delete policy 993 and also policy number 1263.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? I'll ask for a vote. Mrs. Pallasch?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavao?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Next is a first read of policy number 1073. I was wondering if maybe one of the two policy subcommittee members could
Mr.
gloss
Chairman,
this for us for a minute. Yes.
just to help the policy subcommittee chairpersons,
Hello?
in front of you, in your packet, you received the policies, but because it didn't come in color, you didn't see the exact changes. So in front of you tonight, you have red line versions
Oh,
to help you understand what the exact changes were.
I have 1073 and 1075. Do we also have for red line? Oh, 1187 and 1188.
Are
Were
Those are
brand
new.
Red line because they were new. Perfect.
yeah.
Want to talk about 1073?
Sure, I'll take 1073. So this is the Tiverton Public Schools webpage policy, and what we've done is made some changes just to bring it up to date. And again, you now have the red line versions in front of you in your package.
So for item number 3, nothing, no changes to policy statements 1 and 2. Statement 3, the webmaster, and our change was "or designee of the superintendent" was an add-on, will be responsible for posting of information. Item number 6, we deleted "if it is determined that," it just was too wordy. We start the sentence with "the district has parental permission," and we crossed out "via signed release" to post student material. And then at the end of the sentence, instead of the "via signed release," we put in "unless an opt-out form is on file signed by the parent." I think I see just a misspelling on "signed," and I think an opt-out form should be 2 words, unless anyone disagrees.
I'd rather have the parent singed it, but I understand.
Well, we can talk about it once I'm finished going
I'm like,
through it.
it's a joke. I don't know if anyone got it.
Oh, sorry, Mike. And then, under the section on procedures, we're not looking to allocate necessary hard drive space. It's necessary website space for the schools, as this is a webpage policy. And then number 3, we just deleted the beginning of the sentence to say that permission to post on a page must be submitted to the superintendent and/or principal as applicable. So that leaves it open enough to make things practical. And then we deleted the last statement to include a link to the webmaster mail. Again, this is just a cleanup and bringing things up to date for this policy.
Okay. Any discussion from the committee? This is first read, so it'll come back to us either at our next meeting or one in January. Our next meeting is going to be a bit crowded, so we may not get to it at the next one. Otherwise, we'll move on to policy number 1075. This is the electronics communications policy. I don't know if one of you guys want to kind of walk us through it.
Sure, I'll take
Or
this
not.
one. Really just sort of updates from Dr. Sanchione based upon what they actually do. Like, we don't use school messenger. Texts are now sent to groups, never to an individual. I mean, really, it's just, the second page, we've decided, any TSD social media, we didn't know what TSD related meant. It's either the school district or it wasn't. Again, we just took out the examples because technology change is so quick that, why even name them? Because we don't want to have to change the policy every time we use a different technology. And then, the big change there is just really, just to make sure that everybody understands where the request is made. And then the last was sentence was struck only because that was, when we first implemented it, we gave everybody 30 days to comply. So it really is just a few little cleanups.
Okay. Thank you, guys, and other members of the policy subcommittee. Any discussion or questions? This is, again, is the first read, so it'll come back to us either in December or first meeting in January.
Yeah, there's copies for everyone.
Okay. Next is first read of, and I don't know if these should be taken as a pair, first read suicide policy, and then first read suicide policy protocol, numbers 1187 and 1188. Peter, you want to
Sure, be happy
speak to this one?
So required, the Nathan Bruno Act was passed by the Rhode Island legislation that requires all school districts to have a suicide prevention policy. We read through the act, put in the components. Attorney Scungio then worded this, so what you're seeing today is his document. We then just Tivertonized it. What I mean by that is the positions that we put in there would execute it here in Tiverton. So it's been reviewed by our attorney. It meets all the criteria outlined by the Nathan Bruno Act, and it's submitted to you tonight for first read consideration.
Okay. Any discussion, questions? Mr. Farley? Oh. Okay. So again, come back to us on the 13th or the first meeting in January. So next is item 7A, new business RICAS presentation. Dr. Sanquioni?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we're going to bring up presentation for you on the screen there. And go through our RICAS data here. Yeah, if you could do that, it probably would flow a lot smoother. Thank you, Danny. Okay. So a little introduction here. These results are not surprising here. Obviously, the school system has been in some turmoil as a result of the pandemic. We've had, both distance learning. We've gone back to school. We've had high absenteeisms. The highest rates we've seen were accrued last year. A lot of factors went into, and as you know, these tests were administered in the spring of 2022. As you start going through the results here, you're going to see pockets of great success, and then you're going to see some areas that really need some attention to detail. We take these results very seriously. I share this with you every year. We take these results and we dissect them in a million different ways. We looked at them by school, we look at them by grade, we look at them by subject matter, we look at them by teacher, and later on in the presentation I'll actually show you, we break it down, we look at them by question. And we use that then to adjust our curriculum as needed and to bring instruction to the individual students as needed. And we don't wait for these results. I mean, most of our principals, fortunate to have Principal Cabral and Principal Wardell with us here this evening. I think the other ones are online. And they've been analyzing these results as soon as they got their hands on them. Groupings for students, for math specialists, for reading specialists, and other groups have been in place since the beginning of the school year. And we continue then to use the data to support our students as best as possible. So I'm going to skip through the high school data. We'll bring that back to you hopefully on the 13th maybe. And we'll talk just about RICAS. So RICAS, and part of RICAS is the NGS science standards. And so I'll start there. Here I'm going to show you the results compared over the last 3 years. (2019, 21, and 22). As you know, there were no tests in 2020. That was the year we went home in March. So, when we look back to 2019, which is the last normal school year, and then we come back in 2021, I'll remind you, in 2021, that was the year that we did hybrid. And so a lot of our students stayed home and did distance learning. The high school had a hybrid schedule for a little while. That was a really disjointed year. And then last year, we tried to come back full school. We had a number of students stay out. We had, again, very high absenteeism. But I would summarize these science scores by saying we've basically remained steady progress. So you look grades 5, 8, and 11, which are the 3 grades we administer them. I see no real deep degradation of scores. I mean, certainly we'd like to continue to advance these scores. I believe they will come up as the normalcy of school takes place this year, the high levels of instruction that we're putting into all of our classrooms with the skills of our teachers.
Dr. Larkin, can I just ask how you want to handle questions? Do you want to
Yeah.
do slide by slide, or should I just make notes for the end?
Basically read my mind. I think it might be a good idea to open the floor to questions when we were in topic areas,
Sure.
if that's okay?
Yep.
So, are we done with science? You're going to go to...
Well, there's 3 more slides of science.
Okay.
So, when we look at the comparative scores, what I just showed you over 3 different school years with a gap year of 2020, and again, no real significant degradation of scores there. But then the thing that's telling to us is how have we compared to what we consider our neighbors and then like districts as defined by RIDE. And so here's the grade 5 comparative analysis, and you can see, Tiverton Middle School is sort of in the middle of the pack there. Certainly we would strive to be better than that. I think we're real close to the communities, a couple of the communities right to our right, and I think with a little extra effort and adherence to detail, we would move that bar way over to the right. And same thing applies to 8th grade. And you can say we're kind of middle of the pack there, and very close to some schools to our right. And I think there's room for growth. And I know Principal Zatoli has taken these results very seriously. He's worked with the science coordinator Maria Clary, and again, that science department is very talented and does a lot of great work. And no doubt they will generate outstanding results moving forward. And then in grade 11, you can see the school slides a little bit more to the right. Again, we have a strong science department led by Lee Cusimano. Again, Principal Craven does a lot of analysis of this data, shares that with our staff. People work really hard to make sure that our students are learning the skills and concepts that are embedded on that test. So I'll pause there. That kind of concludes the look at the science test for grades 5, 8, and 11.
Peter, before we go to questions, can you just flash those slides back up for us
Sure.
real quickly?
Yep.
Because I'm just, the comparative district ones. So, okay, and then the next one. And then the next one. It's interesting how consistently we're tracking sort of right where, comparatively, we're tracking, sort of above some and below others, fairly consistency. So Deb, it sounded like you had a question.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting if you go back to the first one, Peter, where you do,
The 3-year comparison?
yeah.
Can you take that over, Danny, and send it back to that? Thank you.
Students at or above proficiency, Danny? Right there.
Yep.
Whoop, go back. Right there. So is that odd that for like grade 8, we actually went up in 2021? That seems like an odd, because I would
Yeah.
expect we would go down, right? Because
Yeah,
19?
We're a little perplexed by that, too, to be honest with you.
Okay.
That's a tough year for us. But again, looking at any grade in isolation.
Because I kind of see, I would expect to see what we see in the other two is you go down in the COVID year and then you make a slight improvement.
Yep.
Or in grade 11, basically stayed the same. I just thought that was so odd.
I would
So we don't really know why we seem
We
to.
do. That is probably that is our current 9th grade. And they're an
So
extremely
very sharp
academic-
science?
yeah.
They're going to be a bunch of
Well,
scientists?
if I was to show you RICAS results from that class over previous years, they've been our
Okay.
strongest class moving through.
Okay, yeah, that just kind of jumped out at me. I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? Thank you.
Okay, so if we're good on science, I'll move it.
I just have one more
Sure.
question.
Oh, yeah, actually, go ahead.
What goes into the choices you've made to compare our schools to?
So I took all the communities in the East Bay, and then RIDE has a thing called an ERG, which says we're like certain communities. They use a whole bunch of criteria, socioeconomic data, the level of parents educate. There's several factors, so I use those communities too. So I think that put Johnston in there, Burrowville, Smithfield. And and the other ones are all East Bay communities.
So
Well-
East Bay or RIDE sort of urban?
Group comparison communities.
And we've always used Middletown and Bristol Warren as our two kind of most close demographic lookalikes.
Yeah,
Since at least, and I'm just saying that's what we've consistently used, at least for 10 years. So,
I just, for this, probably it's okay, but we may want to revisit it for financial purposes, but I think for this, it's probably fine.
okay.
Can we start leaving Barrington and Portsmouth off the future ones?
I think
So
it's
we
always,
feel pretty good?
Well,
I
wait
mean,
till we show you some
right on
more
the heels of
results here.
Smithfield?
You're gonna see some interesting results with that.
So, and at the risk of sounding like a broken record, which I hate that phrase, these oftentimes track with socioeconomic status. And so if you look at median income, that is the most solid indicator of where these numbers are going to be. And and what you're always trying to do is move the needle up from where you're, that shouldn't be destiny. And so you're trying to move the needle up from that.
So maybe that would be an interesting addition, is have a median income line so that we could see, does it or doesn't it track?
That's an excellent idea,
Yeah.
because I would question the validity of that statement, especially when you're comparing us to Bristol Warren.
The validity of what
and
statement?
The fact that it tracks
Tracks
with
with median.
socioeconomic results.
Yeah. So
I'm
Bristol
pretty
Warren's in there
sure
because they're
that's-
East Bay.
Yeah,
they-
just for
Well,
in the future,
understood.
that
Yeah.
might be something that might be interesting, let's the medium.
And I'd also like to know where we rank as, in the state, right? The state you have, how many school districts? I know it's
It's
not
like,
39.
what, 42?
36.
If you count the charter schools, it's about 42.
Oh, right.
That's pretty good.
Where do we place in the state as a whole?
I think
On
there's a
each
state
one.
Well, there's a
coming
statewide
up.
one up there. There's a statewide one. So
What I meant was what's our rank?
among
Are we
all,
number 20? Are we number 16? Are we number 35? Where are we?
I can do that analysis for you. I just,
Where is
again, I
that?
compared
Yep,
to these
nope,
communities
this
to
is
the
fine.
mid-source.
I mean, as we're looking at data, right, that's another way to look at it.
Yep.
Yeah, force
I
rank.
think our high school's
I like
ranked
that. Force
15.
rank would be good to also know.
Yeah,
Rank overall.
Yeah, force rank, take 42, and where are we?
yeah.
10,
which is
12?
what Diane, yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
So before we leave science, Mike, any questions or comments?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Elaine?
I'm good.
Okay. All right,
Dr. Larkin.
Mr. Farley?
Sorry. I was just wondering, could we possibly get, and it was sort of hinted to earlier, some sort of assessment to how the grades in previous years, or rather the grades assessed, so grade 11 in 2022, which would be class of 2023, how they performed in 5th grade, how they performed in 8th grade.
Yeah, we have a cohort data analysis. It's
Okay.
coming.
I see. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. No.
All right. Help me out here, Danny. So this is an overall look at the RICAS over 4 different years, and the percentage of students who are doing, meeting the expectations. So the top 2 categories, meeting or exceeding. And again, the bars just are obviously comparing different groups of students at the same grade level over a certain amount of time. And again, the yellow bar is where our students, where they took the test in 2022. So, you can see some overall, I think, again, there's a little degradation at some of the middle school grades, but overall, I feel like our students, perform pretty well. Again, this compares different groups of students, so I'm not, we show this to you, there's not, we don't put a lot of faith in this. This is more, we look at this data more to kind of judge our curriculum and go back and see what questions our kids were missing so that we know that curriculum can align to that. And so I'll just show you the same thing for math. And what's interesting is, and this kind of reflects the state, but some amazing performance, that those yellow bars, we're achieving some of the highest success we've ever had in math in the district. And you can see it, quite clearly on a couple bars there. So we'll look at that data a couple different ways as we keep going through the presentation tonight. So another way to look at it is to look at the comparison to Rhode Island and the number of students who are meeting or exceeding expectations for our 3 elementary schools. All right, so here we're looking at ELA is in yellow, math is in the maroon color. And you can see, as we would always expect, to be well above state average, and some great growth there for 3 of our schools. And again, we'll show you this data a couple different ways.
Dr. Secchioni?
Sure.
The yellow is what, a year ago?
That's ELA.
No.
And
ELA versus.
The yellow
22.
versus maroon again?
is 2 different subjects, just showing you
ELA
the
and
percent of students who achieved status.
Oh, okay.
It's 2022
Okay, I see
data.
it now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Isn't that, I'm surprised that math is actually higher than ELA?
Yeah.
That
That's-
actually reflected itself in the state as a whole.
Huh.
Yeah, and
It's not
part of
usually
that,
the way it goes.
At the elementary level, at least.
Right, yeah.
so same thing here, grade 4. And again, state averages on the far right. Our math scores are in maroon, our language arts scores are in yellow. And again, we'll dissect these results a few different ways. In here, I'm showing you grade 5 and 6. So the first bar to the left is grade 5 ELA, then it goes grade 5 math, then it goes grade 6 ELA and grade 6 math. Rhode Island is in blue, Tiverton is in the reddish color. So as we would always expect to be above state average. And then we go to grades 7 and 8, and again, it's 7 ELA, 7 math, 8 ELA, 8 math. Tiverton is in red, and the state average is in blue. And again, we're going to show these results a few different ways. We've got some work to do here.
Grade 8 ELA.
Yeah, and we'll show that to you a couple ways. We've already figured out what caused some of this to happen, and confident that we can rectify it and improve upon it. So here's another way to look at data. I know there's a lot on here, but this is the growth. And the first colored bar, if I'm going from left to right, in the middle, or not the big ones in the middle, but the first colored bars there, that's our growth percentiles. And what that is we look at students, so this is grade 4, because what happens is we take every student who was in grade 3 and wherever they scored in grade 3, so whether you're a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then you get lumped in with every student in the state who was a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then we compare how people moved in grade 4. So there's no test, there's no comparison for 3 because students don't take the test in 2. But we can look at growth from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8. And then we have those bands there. What it tells us, it's more important to look at this on an individual basis, which is what our principals and curriculum coordinators do. We look at students who, if they had high scores, if they were already a 4, they were already a high 3, they're not going to get growth. Regression to the mean is a statistical component, right? So if you look at Fort Barton, you're going to see a high score in the red, which means no growth. Well, it's because Fort Barton had many students who were 4s and high 3s. So if you just stay where you are, you're not getting any growth. So the best way for us to use this data is to look at the students who were categorized as a 1 or a 2 or maybe a low 3 and figure out why didn't they make growth. And so collectively looking at it, it's not really a valid way to assess a school or a program or anything like that. The best way to look at this is look at our 1s or 2s and our low 3s and figure out, okay, why didn't those certain kids move and have growth, commensurate with other kids who were at their level the year before.
I would say, though, Peter, one of the things that jumped out on me, to me on this one is, okay, state average growth is 50. That's the top bar. Average meeting or exceeding expectations is 31. So we're, if you go to the individual schools, starting with, 45, 54, 49, I think we're seeing again that struggle at ELA, that our average growth is only 39 and our meeting and exceeding expectations is still 31.5, versus if you look at Picasset, it had an average growth percentage of 54, which is above the state, and you can see it starting to move the needle of exceeding expectations. So you see that growth in the right direction, and I think it's just like you said, it's another way to look at the data where, there's a little bit of concern at the middle school.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll keep looking at that. But again, we analyze these growth scores. Our principals
Yep.
do a great job of looking at it, each individual student, and figuring out where they were and how to move them forward. So same thing for mathematics. Again, it's a comparison as a group of students across the state from one year to the next, how much growth they were making. Again, a lot of statistical stuff plays into this, regression to the mean, holding kids at the same levels. But again, you want to see growth again in the students who will categorize a 1 or 2 or a low 3, and that's where we look at our students individually.
I'd like to give a kudos to Picasset School. Got to recognize that. Mr. Cabral, no offense.
We're going to do a little
No
bit of that
offense.
we're going to do a little bit of that this evening.
Quite good, but, we've had quite a few meetings, and Catholic School did a fantastic job.
All right. Like, for me, when I look at Ranger and Fort Barton, I expect they're going to be really good. And I'm not saying I expect Picasset's going to be low, but when I see something like this, it was almost ecstatic to see that. So
Trending in the right direction, for sure.
For sure.
That's the reason why I transferred to Picasset. I wanted to level the playing field
Yep.
for the kids and the families at the Picasset district with the other 2 schools. And that type of growth, as I've spoken to Dr. St. Joan many times, really takes about 5 to 7 years to see that substantial amount of growth. But to see in the second year that I've been at Picasset, these type of results. I am so proud of the students and the teachers and their parents and everyone really at the Cohasset community, because we did this all together.
Well, keep it up.
All right, so that was growth, and now we'll do comparisons, as I've already shown you, with other communities across all the tests that were administered last spring. So we'll start with third grade ELA. And again, this is going to be the shining moment for the district as we go through the elementary scores. Again, you're going to see some very high scores with Ranger and Fort Barton. And as we've already identified, Pecasset has definitely moved. They were on the far left for many years. They're moving closer and closer to their sister schools, but also moving across and raising the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding expectations. So again, this is a great one to show you. And the same thing plays itself out in math. I mean, this is some amazing results here when you see our three schools almost outperforming, the entire East Bay and our like communities with very high scores. I think the data, speaks for itself there. And we go to fourth grade ELA, and again, the scores are extremely strong. You look at the Ranger way over there on the far right, and again, Fort Barton and Pecasset's showing growth. Ranger is going to be our next, I've already spoken to Principal Cabral, absolutely worthy of blue ribbon. Going to encourage him to submit that application, and expect that school will achieve that status pretty soon. And then fourth grade math, again, we're seeing our elementary schools perform exceedingly well. Great growth, and the schools that have done well are maintaining that growth. So if there's any, because that's the elementary scores.
Yeah.
So kind of
Okay.
pause there
I'll
for a
open up
second.
to questions. Mr. Dakotas?
Just proud of everything we're doing at the elementary level. That's going to keep pushing itself forward. Expect all the years I sit here, these numbers grow higher and higher. Nice job.
Mrs. Pavao?
Have nothing.
Mrs. Farnworth?
I just want to, first off, congratulate you, Suzette, for the growth that your school is experiencing. I know we've already kind of went through this, but I wanted to be able to say that myself, because I, too, am a Pecasset school groupie, and certainly I take it here when they don't do well, and I also take it here when they do. So I congratulate you. And Mr. Cabral, your school has been one of the most consistently high performers in our district since the day I've been following all of this. It's always had such a stellar reputation. And for Ms. Donnelly Roach, who I know is out there in Zoom land somewhere, what can we say about the blue ribbon status, right? Let's just keep the high growth and keep things heading in the right direction, so we can send these kids to middle school as the scholars that we know they all can be.
So great success at our elementary level, and again, those fourth graders are now in our middle school, and we expect that success to continue on. So, the middle school, we're going to have a little different trend here, though. We've got some degradation of scores here. Grade 5 ELA here showing you. And, the math actually maintained relative success, relative overall performance. However, the ELA scores continue to show in grade 6. And I'll go to 6 math. And the 7th grade ELA. Seventh grade math. 8th grade ELA. And 8th grade math. So what I want to share with you that is, I think we all hope that we would have performed better at that school level, but where we are is the starting place. And we've already identified some significant issues that we found at the school that we've already addressed, and feel like that will have a great impact on the scores moving forward. We are fortunate with the data manager that we hired, who's an expert in breaking apart this data and explaining it in a way that our teachers and our principals can look at the data and apply it to the instruction that takes place at their schools. So Katie Barrett's done an amazing analysis of the middle school pointed out with ELA that the writing questions are worth 8 points, and our kids were basically achieving 2 to 3 of those 8 points. And so we know we have work to do at the writing level, and that's an easy fix for us. Why it slipped, a lot of reasons, but what we do, and the positiveness of this is we know what the solution is to the problem, and that solution is being applied right now, and I expect to see positive results come from it.
So I'm going to open up the floor to questions on the part of the committee. Mrs. Pallasch?
So, Peter, how long have we had Wit and Wisdom?
We are in its 4th year.
How do you know, as an educator, like, and the educators, how do you know if it's, like, how long does it take for curriculum to take hold? Is it the wrong curriculum? Do we need to, like, how do you make those assessments?
So we look at, and that's a great question, and I'll kind of go here, and this is just for illustrative purposes only. So this is an item analysis. And so what the bar is showing you here is how Tiverton students in the blue bar scored on each question and how the state scored on each question. And so we track the question and we match the questions back to our curriculum. And we try to look for omissions, redundancies, things that our students maybe did not master. And then it becomes incumbent upon our principals to work with our teachers to make sure those things get infused in there. So no curriculum is perfect. Wit and Wisdom has certainly made a positive difference if you look logistically.
The trend.
And, just the elementary trend alone. And as those students continue to progress in the middle school, we feel like they're going to benefit from the Wit and Wisdom curriculum. So, again, it's realizing and looking at, okay, over 180 days, we want our students to master this. Are they mastering the right things? And by doing this analysis and spending a lot of time with it, we can change things to make sure they are getting the knowledge and skills they need to do well in these tests.
Is there ever a situation where it's like, this curriculum works for elementary kids, but maybe not for, and you have to tweak it a little bit for the higher grades?
That's always a
Just
possibility.
a different learning?
But
Okay. But
if I
you don't
was-
think that's the issue?
I don't.
Okay.
I could share with,
No, I know you guys analyze these backwards, forwards, sideways,
because
upside
like
down.
was to show you
Shake 'em.
last year's
Okay,
ELA results for the middle school, it had a different trend to it.
okay. And just because, like you said, it was not just one grade, it was all trending down.
So,
That's
again, I'll
it.
just show these, Phil. So, his 8th grade ELA, this is the one we didn't do well on, and I can guarantee you those dips are the writing questions, and those are the things that our staff is working on to make sure our kids are writing more. But not just writing more, because you always can write more. It's got to be the right type of writing that gets assessed the right way, that gives the right feedback to students so they can improve upon their writing, and that's the task we're taking on now. And then, the 8th grade math, again, you can see the trend. We're pretty much always on line with the state, how everyone else perform. We do better on some questions. We never really do worse than the state, but we don't analyze it that way. We analyze our dips. So anytime you see something dropping down on a question, that's what we need to figure out what that question was. When did we teach it? When did we reinforce it? When do our kids, we hope that they mastered it? And how do we do it differently this year? So I think that is it.
Okay, so I'll again open up the floor to questions from the committee. Deb, anything else?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Mrs. Farnworth?
So I'll just state right out, I am not ever have been or will be a proponent of teaching to the test. I think that's something that us lay folks have heard on several occasions, that's the complaint from educators at times, that, they're being forced to teach to the test, and that's not something I would ever support, and I'm sure you wouldn't either.
No, it depends on what the test is. If the test is a
Right.
skill that we think is a lifelong skill for a student, then we're going to teach the skill. It's on the test, right? So we
Right.
don't, exactly.
But my comment is more around the fact that you presented goals for the district and goals from each principal over the last 2 months, and it was prior to us receiving this data. Is anything in those goals that you've already set out to do going to be impacted by really what I see as mediocre results?
Mediocre to middle school, I'd say pretty
And
outstanding
I am
results.
speaking specifically
Yeah.
about the middle school.
So the goals, if I draw back on Principal Zatoli, was more, not centered on RICAS, but centered on our STAR scores, which is what we assess kids 3 times during the year. And so we correlate STAR back to RICAS and look at how the STAR tells us how well a student would do on RICAS. So, yeah, there's a lot of work being done right now. But again, I can assure you at the middle school that question analysis is taking place, that the teachers at each grade level know the things that our kids didn't master, and they're expected then to enhance that instruction in those areas so our students do better. And, you know, there's, with support and help and the PD that we're providing everyone, that, you know, there's high confidence that things will change for the better.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Pavao? Mr. Dakotas?
My question would be, Principal Craven, Principal Zatoli, did they get together and try to figure this out? Because we have an overlap here, right? Because Principal Craven was just there 2 years ago.
Yep.
So some of that goes back to her, goes forward. So did they meet and actually try to do that? Okay.
Because Principal Craven has a great understanding of wit and wisdom. She was part of the selection committee and is able to talk with Principal Zatoli about certain questions and how it matches back to wit and wisdom and where it needs to be reinforced and
Okay.
enhanced and things like that.
Okay, so they work together with that.
All the time.
Okay,
Yep.
that was my question. Thank you.
So I'm impressed at how tightly the item analysis curves are superimposed. The ones from Tiverton are superimposed on the state, which is not what you'd want. You'd want it to be significantly higher.
Right, we'd want that blue bar to always be
I don't know
above
what-
the green.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. I'm just sort of impressed by that. And, you know, one thing you always say, okay, this seems to be a statewide consistent effect. So is it the, you know, is it the test itself? Or is it the colloquialism that's embedded in the test? So all tests, you know, they are validated and normed and all this other stuff, but you can't get all of that colloquialism out of them. And I'm just wondering about that. Obviously, other districts that we would think of ourselves as comparators to did better. So that would sort of be the countervailing argument. I'm just pointing it out. I'm not really sure what to make of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure the green band really means a lot to us. I think it's just, for us, it's where we dipped. Where, you know, the percentage of our students who didn't master that question, whatever that question is, question 11 or 12, that has that first real dip there.
Yeah.
What was it, and why did that happen? That's what we strive to figure out. You know, where was it taught? Was it taught in October? Did we reinforce it in November or December? Did kids really master it? I mean, the data says they didn't, so okay, so what are we going to do differently this year to make sure they do master it?
Right. But the two observations are, one is that it was statewide, and yet
Right.
other districts eluded it. So there is, and it's great that you're going through the item analysis to sort of figure that out. Towards that end, you know, you alluded to some of the things you are doing now in the middle school. Can you elaborate on that some?
I started a little bit with that, and that Katie Barrett, who did a great analysis on this, you know, I can assure you perfect that chart is up there. Those dips are all the writing questions. And, you know, she did the analysis and she came back and was able to show us that our kids were scoring 3 to 4 points on average when the question was worth 8 points.
So a writing component of a math.
Or just the
test,
ELA or
whatever.
a math, yeah. And so that's to me, and, you know, when I sit with Principal Zatoli, you know, we both know that's an easy fix. You know, writing is a skill that is mastered by doing it, and by doing the right writing with the right analysis of it and the right feedback to our students, and that's what we got to do more of. So he's got a whole action plan right now to enhance the writing at that middle school.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Mr. Farley?
Yeah, a few. First, a question about the this graph, actually. The x-axis, the item number, like 1 through 40, and then, well, I'm looking at the 8th grade math, so this is 1 through 31 up there, and then a bunch of specific reading, language, writing. I assume, what does the item number correlate to exactly?
Question on the test.
Ah, I see. Secondary. So these scores, are they being paired with other forms of assessment to evaluate the curriculum? Is it purely this? You mentioned STAR, so I'd presume STAR somewhat pairs with this as well, but is there in-person evaluation, et cetera?
So STAR for one, at the middle school, we administer it 3 times a year, and we set the STAR norms for our students so we know how well they're doing it to correspond to RICAS, so that hopefully there's a direct correlation there. So in September, in January, February, we give the second time, and the third time, we really can get a sort of an early analysis of how well our students are performing, if it matches up to RICAS. Then within our math and language arts curriculum, we have our common assessments. You probably heard the term, so the exams, the tests, and things of that nature. And it's imperative then we ask our teachers to administer those exams close to the same amount of time if they teach the same subject area, and to look at those results together and to figure out how well certain students did. Sometimes a teacher may generate better results. We want our teachers to share their best strategies. And if their students collectively are not doing well, what they can do to enhance it. And if they're collectively doing well, because we want to celebrate the positive too, to reinforce that type of instruction.
So I'm to understand, these common assessments, are they made by the district or by the curriculum?
They're made by, well, some are made by the district, by the teachers themselves, but some are made by the producers of the curriculum we use. So, for example, we use Envision Math, and we use Wit and Wisdom for language arts.
And then sort of this last question. So how much do the scores in specifically in the middle school, right? How much will that affect teachers directly? Will there be a individual meeting with the teacher, or is it more of a broad, the district is looking at this as a whole, if that makes sense?
It does. I would say by department.
By department?
Right, so math department, language arts department sort of face the burden on this, although, or science too, because of the NGA test. But we also expect social studies and our other disciplines to have students writing and to do the same type of writing that students would experience on RICAS, so it becomes a collective responsibility of all teachers to get our students ready.
And are there, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Great questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the public or any of our administrators online? Doesn't look like it. And any of our administrators present like to comment, or you're gonna? All right. Well, thank you very much. That was very.
Yep, and we'll add some data to that moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. So we're up to item 9, future meeting dates, agenda topics. So we do have a meeting, just an executive, this Thursday at 6 p.m. here in the library. So December 1st. And then our next meeting, our next regular meeting after that is December 13th. We're going to be focusing on the structural deficit, the stipends, and the FY24 budget. I don't know if, Peter, is there an urgency to bring those policies back at this point? Or can that wait until January? Or is the budget, or is the agenda for the 13th sufficiently lean right now to bring them back? Just trying to, because that was the kind of.
They can wait. There's
They
nothing
can wait.
pressing there, yes. We have to get this suicide prevention policy approved some point during this school year.
Okay.
The other ones are fine.
Is everybody else okay with that?
I honestly don't know why we need to wait. I don't think they're going to take all that much time on an agenda,
Uh,
unless you anticipate they would.
Well, sometimes they do, actually. But I was trying to continue to maintain the
Just
kind of integrity of that
finances.
meeting to really just be focusing on the budget.
Okay.
That's fine. That was my,
And then,
Only
Peter,
reason.
all of the high school data, score, PSATs, SATs, you
You wanna
bring
do
on the
that?
second?
On the 13th, on the 2nd.
On the
Okay.
second?
Yep.
That sound good?
yeah.
Because that's, we kind of did RICAS, and now all of that sort of looks like high school, so that'll be a nice break
Right.
to that.
And we have to have the joint meeting, Joan.
January 2nd, what was the other item? Oh, policy.
For January 15th. Have you dared to even try to figure that out yet?
You'll send us dates when they have them, though? Thank you.
We're trying to seat a budget committee,
Okay.
Oh,
so we have to seat 2 people. For a candidates meeting, we're trying to schedule for next week.
Okay.
So, once we get the budget committee
Right.
ask people, okay, when are you available to meet?
Thank you.
Thank you. I can say that the town council last night set January 17th for the next discussion of casino fund
Yeah.
allocations.
So we have to, yeah, we should probably list that on our upcoming meetings. And December 13th is also a building committee meeting. Okay, anything else about meetings? All right, I'm going to ask for motion to move into executive session under Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, negotiation update, Council 94 and NEA Newport Special Education.
Is there one more there? See?
See, I think you're looking at the old,
Oh, I'm not looking at the
The old
updated
agenda.
one, sorry. So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Pallasch?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavao?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
I vote yes. We're in executive session.